So it's the subject matter is huge, and I'm just surfing, and I will try to give you a little bit of society, what actually we are going here, we are doing here at Cultural Studies. I will present a little bit my own field work and the works of my students who are very much into the trance, if this apple will work. Oh, it's work. So, first, of course, Bali, spirit possession. What is spirit possession? I will not go into neuroscience, which is extremely interesting subject matter, especially in Israel. There is a new research concerning our brain, who is in trance, what really happens, but I will not go because this is really too much. This is Bali. In Bali, just to mention, I will not develop this subject, because Bali is probably the most interesting place to visit in terms of possession, spirit possession, trance. I never saw people jumping in the trance so fast as in Bali. It's just like click. The very special rhythm being sung by a few people, it's enough to get person just to devour a live chicken. I saw this myself. This is very spectacular. Okay. I will use conventional ways. I try to be modern. And so this is in India, my PhD student who I'm supervising. Unfortunately, this is not working, so maybe we'll listen from here. No, this is very short. So this is Teyam, one of probably today most spectacular possession, religious and theatrical performance at the same time, theater and therapy. These people, for the time of the performance, are considered to be the gods. The gods channeled being here with us, and all these people, they came here not only for blessing, but to talk with this spirit, with the God. The God is protecting the field. It's a very, very broad meaning, but look how complex is the mask and how complex is the transformation. Another trance that happens today in India is the trance of Dalit people in Kerala. These people, this is very recent development. As you know, untouchables, Dalit culture was invisible for many thousand years. Only last 3 decades they started in India to recognize Dalits, untouchable, as kind of cultural influence and an important part of their culture. And this is once in a year now, Dalits are permitted to visit the Brahmin temple with their gods, monuments, and so they are not permitted to go inside. They have to keep at the gate, and they then, of course, we don't know how to call it. These people actually are enjoying themselves. The bloodletting is a part of this ritual, and it goes few days, and it goes forever. It's permanent, enduring itself. And so, as you can see, this woman, and this is village after village, it goes with no end. And another example, this is from my work in Ladakh, close to Leia. This is Oracle. This lady is doing this in her private home. So I'm just showing you very different approaches. Open air, big spectacle, and this is very close, intimate atmosphere. You have to be, of course, invited. There is a lot of negotiation before they permit you to visit her. This lady actually is the oracle of Dalai Lama. Whenever he comes to Ladakh, and he is visiting Leh, the capital of Ladakh, very often, this is the Tibetan culture, and this is the Tibetan oracle who is transformed and talking and actually diagnosing and helping people to deal with difficult problems. So this is just like introduction. The spirit possession is with us. There are only few examples from the world, and just going back to the history and to ancient Greek and theater, because this is my main subject. Of course, we think today that the earliest evidence that we have that we can kind of associate with the possession cult, it comes from Crete. It's of course 1500 BC, it's very old, it's still not archaic Greek, it's Minoan civilization, and this huge palace is one of the reconstruction, and of course we all know these goddesses, half naked with beautiful breasts dancing. And actually there is this discussion, is this a goddess's portrait, or maybe this is a priest in goddess's costume? I would say probably priest, because in very close to Knossos, north to Knossos, you can see in the village Isopata, Sir Arthur Evans at the beginning of the 20th century discovered, of course, one of many, many golden rings. This particular is for the theater history or prehistory, probably the most interesting. This is my drawing to show you what exactly happens here. As you can see, there are some ladies, 4 of them big, 1 very small, and of course there are a lot of interpretations possible here. But after meticulous studies of American students, the shape of these bodies is very much similar to, if you go into ethnographic research, you will find that this kind of S-shaped body is very characteristic for people in trance, in altered state of consciousness. So what we think today, that this is kind of story of channeling the goddess. This is the goddess who is flying away from a very distant area from the other side, and she comes to kind of possess this one. And these 3, they are dancing around in kind of support. What is here important in terms of the origin of the theater is that you have here the workers, the performers in action. So you don't have any the mythological illustration here. You got costume of the priest, at the same time could be costume of the goddess. But for us, it's the costume of the priest, and we can watch the priest like theater people working to be possessed by the gods, by the character. And there is a lot of, there is one of my drawings from the Crete, the excavations. This is now this clay, these figurines you can find in Heracleum Archaeological Museum. This is a little bit later from Olympia, but you got this circle dance extremely popular. And of course with Dionysus, whom we know is always present as the god of wine, but till recently he was also considered to be the originator of theater, which is not true. According to the most recent research, he is associated with the theater only in Athens. For some political reason, that is another story. But Dionysus is also the kind of symbol of the cult of possession. Dionysus is the one who transforms you, who lets you to be another. And this whole ancient Greek categories of ecstasis, meaning standing outside, enthusiasmus, having God inside. So all these words are associated with Dionysus. And in Dionysus, among his followers, we will always find a backhand. And again, you can recognize this S shape of the body, extremely characteristic for these Crete dancers. And as you will later see, for many, many trance people in trance today. And of course, when we talk about origins in theater, we can get very, very small iconographic evidence. That's the one which is unfortunately in Napoli, in archaeological museum. I say unfortunately because the Italian people, they just close everything in the cellars. It's very difficult to see. So I draw this, and you can see here this phallic association, which also brings us close to possession. This is puppet. These are people in trance carrying something which looks like the very much smiling phalluses with big eye. On the other side of the space, you will have more complex image. That's the original, and that's my drawing. You can see here these details. 2 probably organizers, producers of this event. Again, here very characteristic phalluses in erection, which are not their private penises. This is part of the cult. This is part of the costume. And this will later be part of the costume in the comedy, which of course we don't know what is the relation between this early vase and some literary evidences and the later comedy costume. Here you got again puppet and a performer doing something with the horn. Horn from Greeks has extremely important meaning because horn is associated with the wine. This is very close to Dionysus cult. You can see here the wine, and this horn is the vase that you cannot just put aside because there is no place to stand. It has to be drained off. So if there is a wine inside the horn, you must drink it to the end before you put it down. So this is just like the drunkard and very much Dionysic essential instrument. And of course, this Dionysus cult is also kind of possible to experience today. Some people say that in Sardinia, this cult, I'm always showing this to you to give you an idea how powerful this Dionysic performances or Dionysic religious practice is nothing like kind of sexual debate or whatever. This is extremely powerful. Dionysus is the god of transformation who can be extremely dangerous. And this Sardinian people, some Italian scholars, they prove that this has roots in Dionysic cult of spirit possession. They are using mask, which is my next subject matter. Mask as a very powerful, strong possession tool. Of course, when you look for the divine origins of the theater, you must go to Japan. The same happens in India, but in Japan, especially, the gods gave theater to the people. And the gods gave theater to the people as kind of tool of possession. And people, in order to entertain the gods, use mask. Mask is extremely powerful tool of possession because it closes your face, it kind of makes you very difficult to see, very difficult to hear, and this is not only kind of perception problem, but also a very interesting problem of connection between you and the tradition. The mask that is in Japan alive was used before by many genius artists, and so today when the modern performer is using the live mask that is at least once in a year in use in a public performance, he kind of first meditates on this whole tradition of the masters who were using this before him and whose sweat he can feel here. And this possession by the mask is also very typical for the Greek poets. This is the very famous image of Menander. He was composing his poetry while at the same time meditating on the mask and being possessed by the characters. And as you can see, this possession in Japan is extremely artificial. The guy who is playing, the performer, has around 40 years. His face is much bigger than the mask, and that's the whole clue here. The key to understand the Japan artist, that it's not illusion. You don't imitate reality. He is an artist. You should at the same time remember that he is performing for you, that he is never the woman, and you should kind of enjoy his art, his craft of presenting the female character by voice, by movement, but still remembering that he is the old guy, not the woman. He's not illustrating, he's not imitating. And if you go to Greeks, you can see that the mask was probably a more powerful transformative tool. This guy already put the mask on. This is the mask this guy will put on in a moment. As you can see, this is the helmet. The mask covers the whole head. The mask covers the eye, covers the face, and the mouth, and the ears, so you hear differently. You see a little bit. So it's really totally transforming your perception. Thomas Vovolis, modern mask maker, presents this kind of idea what ancient Greek mask could be. So whatever you think about Greek theater, this is really transformative art. Person who is using this kind of mask is really transformed. You can say that that's just the simplest way to make somebody into the altered state of consciousness. This guy who is performing is being possessed. And so in tragedy, of course, we have many associations. I will just skip this. Eleusis is one of the many important trance-like origins of theater, but I will go to this vase. This was found a few years ago in Ukraine, and now it's in Kiev. And so this is for us extremely valuable. That's the only evidence actually we have of the performance of the Greek tragedy alive. And you can see here extremely complex philosophical problem. This guy is from the festival. He is the musician. He doesn't belong to the world of the performer. So his costume is a little different. These two persons are performers in the female mask, doing probably chorus dance acting, but you can see they are not having the same movement. So it's not like the chorus was homogeneous. No, it was extremely dynamic, a lot of action. And so these two guys are totally inside the world of the performance, probably in trance, because the mask is transforming their perception. And here is the most surprising character, a little student. He is the student of the musician. He has this reed, because aulos, this instrument of ancient Greek theater, actually is two tubes with two reeds. It sounds like oboe. It's not a flute, it's oboe. And oboe requires reeds. And this guy, this little child, he has here these two reeds in order to replace the use and help the musician to keep going. And so you got the spectator. He is very much interested in what they are doing. You got musician, just like in modern opera, who is not belonging to the performers, and you got performers. So the trance and the possession by the character in ancient Greece is very complex. And of course, the most famous example is Bacchae, where by Euripides, where you can have the main subject matter of the play, the possession by the female. 1 minute. Okay, so I will go on, and so I will just say you in this 1 minute that there are a lot of influences of this possession, the spirit possession in modern theater, starting from Stanislavski, who, as you probably know, invented with this guy Moscow Art Theater. And I must finish, sorry, but my idea was to prove that these guys are kind of continuing the art of possession and whatever Stanislavski is starting, and many people are rejecting this, like Mayer Holt or Mikhail Chekhov. They just reject this because they got into troubles after this переживание, experiencing of the character, after being possessed by the character, they lose their mind. And so this is dangerous. But Polish director Jerzy Grotowski actually follows to the end. And
to chciałem zapytać, więc uznajmy, że to jest moje pytanie.
Yeah, and I will show you. Of course, the most famous example of this is the Constant Prince, when Grotowski asked actor Ryszard Cieślak to channel Jesus Christ. And actually Cieślak was transformed into the Christ, but this is not Jesus Christ from the theologians or religious books. This is his private Jesus Christ. Who is Jesus' character for you? And as you can see, of course, in order to channel this spirit of religious founding father, Cieślak is using very characteristic images. His body is channeling the energy of the Christian Jesus, because his body is taking the shape of many images of crucifixion, of, as you can see here, flagellation. So all this was to create from the body a channel for the spiritual transmission. And so it's very interesting work. But whatever, but because this was still his private Christ, it was also based on his sexual. Grotowski was using what Stanislavski called the memory of your body. And so it's extremely dangerous, because part of this actor's routine was based on his private memory of his first sexual intercourse in very dramatic circumstances. So when he is flagellating himself, he recalls his first great sexual ecstasy. And so here you got the offering of the human body with kind of ecstatic enjoyment. And so it's very powerful. And so that's one of the examples.
Jest to niezwykle fascynujące, interesujące. Jakieś pytania od Państwa? Any questions?
Professor, something, because I usually I would like to ask about this ring, actually, which you showed us some slides before. Do you know more examples of this kind of jewelry?
Yes, yes. Now there is this huge website devoted only to the Cretan golden rings. You just put in the you just Google it, golden rings from Minoan civilization or Crete, and you will have special website. It's also
Only for this?
yes, it's hundreds if not thousands.
Dziękuję bardzo. Czy jakieś jeszcze pytania z sali?
One question. If we can speak about different ecstasies in different cultures, or can we speak about a kind of transcultural ecstasy?
I think it's a wonderful question, and I got for this amazing example. When I was in Brazil 2 years ago at the Campinas University, Unicamp University, I was participating in the most amazing actor training. I don't know what happens, but you can imagine. This lady is the most important lady here, and you can see here. So this is the regular dance class of Professor Graciela Rodriguez, who is using trance and possession, of course, quoted from Amazonia. They go to Amazonia. Each student has to spend at least 6 months in Amazonia. These students are from all over the world. So the power of this Amazonian possessive practice are extremely universal. I saw people from Czechoslovakia, people from, these ladies from France, and this lady is one of the greatest contemporary Brazilian dancer who is very much influenced by this whole thing of being possessed by the character. They go to Amazonia, they try to live with very small tribes, and they live according to the everyday rules of these people in the forest of Amazonia. And they just not pretend that they are one of the Amazonian local person. They just keep being tourists, keep being scholars, but by living with these people, they kind of make self-observation. They try to discover what happens to them, and the task is to discover another. And so each person from very different cultures who is participating in this experiment is trying to build the image of himself as another, because of living in very hard and, of course, very pristine circumstances in the deep in the forest of Amazonia. And this is the exam, and so each of them is, of course, as you can see, some of these ladies, they are very artificial, but look at this girl, and so she is really amazing. So I was, and this is just like 10 o'clock in the morning. The windows are open, so everybody can watch it. And so they use possession as a kind of tool. Graciela, her idea is not to make people afraid of this kind of shamanic practice that we will consider as dangerous or something. She uses this for her students, and one of her students actually were doing PhD, and part of his PhD was dance, and part was treatise. So I think I was also experienced by this kind of strange behavior that makes you channeling a spiritual energy, and I can prove that this is universal. If you do precisely, the body is here, the source, the originator, and the body is the channeling tool. And if you dance your body according to the rules of these different cultures, your body really starts to channel. So I think it's universal.
Thank you very much.